Principle 12. Thank you for setting that up so well. And that is using model for determining fitness for duty. In doing so, it provides a structure that guides the selection and organization of your data sources and the information you gather from them. It promotes an effective analysis of the case, and it facilitates the communication of your opinions and your subsequent testimony. And Tom Grisso, I think, gives a lovely structure for organizing fitness for duty evaluations, and it's a model that I use. First is the functional analysis. And the question there is, what functions should this police officer, this examinee, whatever the position is, be able to perform that they're not? Or what behaviors are they exhibiting that they're expected to not exhibit? What are the functional impairments? Now that's objective information. That's provided through the collateral records and from the employer and to some degree by the employee. The second phase is a contextual analysis, just as you had indicated. What does the job demand? Does every police department require the same level of competency as every other police department? No. Does every position within a police agency require the same level of competency as every other position? No, some have higher demands. You have a dispatcher who works in a PSAP with a very, very small volume of calls for service. You have one that has a huge volume of calls for service. A person with a minimal symptomology in the very busy PSAP may be unfit for duty, but a person with a higher symptomology in the low volume PSAP may be fit for duty. So there is a contextual analysis that's important, and that occurs in the interactive analysis. I skipped ahead a little bit. So the contextual analysis is what's required of the person. The causal analysis is the piece that is so critical to defining fitness for duty, and that is what's underlying this functional problem. Why is the person behaving in a way that is contrary to the department's expectations or to organizational or community norms? Why? Why is the person acting out in this way? Why is the person unable to come to work? Why is the person crying? Why is the person late on reports? Why is the person angry all the time? Is it because of a mental condition? Then we need to move on to the next. If it's because of something else, the analysis stops here. I don't move on to interactive analysis. I don't move on to judgmental analysis. If, though, there is a mental condition that may very well account for these functional deficits, then we go to the interactive analysis, which takes the context that the person's working in and the specific demands that take place, the work demands, and analyzes them in terms of, do I believe that the person is able to fulfill the essential functions of their job safely and effectively? So actually I have some additional information that I forgotten I'd put in that might make it easier for you to understand this.
Is that a chapter book?
No, it's a book, Evaluating Competencies, a second edition. It's a very, very good book. An alternative, sort of more abbreviated model is, in choosing an alternative model, I discuss an alternative model in the chapter, but in choosing an alternative fitness for duty evaluation model, I would simply urge you to ask, does the model conform to legal, ethical, and practice standards? And does it facilitate data gathering and assessment methods? And does it aid the case analysis and communication of results in a way that makes it clear and useful to the anticipated audience? Is it helpful to you in organizing and communicating your data? So let's talk about the model that I described. So in functional analysis, what is the evidence and nature of the threat or functional work impairment? this is an abbreviated format of it. In causal analysis, what are the likely reasons for the observed risk or impairments? In the interactive analysis, what is the degree of congruence or incongruence between the person's functional ability and the demands of the job and working conditions? I previously put in the contextual analysis because that's Grissow's model, and I think that that's an important step to be able to get to the interactive process. You really can't evaluate the interaction between the demands of the job and the condition without first having evaluated the context in which it takes place. And then the judgmental analysis is the person job incongruence to the extent that the demands of the job and the person's ability to fulfill the job because of their functional limits, is it sufficient to warrant a finding of unfit for duty? Thinking of it another way, when you look at all the normal people, all the people who are not being sent for fitness for duty evaluations, all the people you treated in your life who are able to do their jobs, but they're just normal people going through life, are they all operating at 100%? Do any of them have symptoms of mental health conditions? Absolutely. Are they unfit for duty? Not all of them. So just because you have a mental health condition and just because you've exhibited problems at work doesn't necessarily make you unfit for duty. The degree of incongruence is what is important in making that determination. And then, of course, the dispositional analysis is what actions might enable the employee to return to work with optimum success. And that's where we get into the question of, are there some modifications that might be able to take place? Perhaps mediation might help between a source of great resentment and hostility, and mediation might help to resolve that issue. Particularly in the direct threat, we know that the workplace violence literature tells us that workplace violence is typically the outcome of the aggressor, issues relevant to the aggressor himself and the context in which the aggression takes place. And that includes tolerance for aggressive behavior or provocation that incites aggressive behavior. So there are times where we want to recommend, in order to minimize the likelihood of violence or direct threat, we want to help the organization understand the kinds of provocative behaviors that are likely to set this guy off and to avoid them. Sometimes it involves, you need to get resolution of this guy's work comp case. This is the major source of aggressive hostility. He's been fighting for 3 years to get this resolved. You need to find a way to get it resolved one way or another. And that will really help to calm things down if we're talking about minimizing violence. So there are certainly times where the contextual issues in an organization play a role in the recommendations I make in the fitness evaluation. Now there's something that I need to jump back to. When we get to the learning objectives, one of the items that I included as a learning objective that we just haven't spent much time on is identifying how individual diversity may limit the validity of assessments, as well as methods for addressing and minimizing the potential impact of diversity. And let me highlight just an example of generally how I think that that's important to address. I was doing a pre-employment examination about a decade ago of an applicant that was lived his life up until that point as up until about a year before I saw him as a man. And he's a Y chromosome, and an XY chromosome, and he was a police officer for about a decade, successful, highly regarded police officer in another agency. And then he decided that he was going to live his life as a woman, married, had 2 children, marriage remained intact, and he went for a sex change operation as well, so a genital reconstruction. And I'm telling you, I had never dealt with this in my life. I'm like, whoa, I am totally out of my league on this one. So I contact Oregon Health Science University in their surgery unit. I ask who's doing the reconstruction surgery, and they tell me, they give me name, I contact that physician. I say, can you name a psychiatrist or 2 who you think are real experts here in town on this subject of preparing people for surgery, because they don't do surgery until they're really prepared. He said, absolutely. Gave me the name of two of these psychiatrists. I called one of them. I said, can I buy some of your time? I need to meet with you. I really need to understand what are the psychological issues relative to successful conversion to a lifestyle of a sex change. And he said, oh, absolutely, be happy to. And he gave me some literature, sat down and talked with me. So when I did the evaluation, I really felt like I had developed some competency in this particular issue of diversity. So in general, when you find yourself faced with, whether it's an American Indian or whether it's a Samoan or someone that you don't have any experience with, understand that the assessment instruments that are normed don't cover this low base rate population. So you got to be very careful about how you interpret it. And seeking consultation is, I think, the very best way to help protect from making uninformed, biased judgments. All right, enough said. Move on to this. So an alternative model for the analysis is you do your functional analysis, find out what are the limitations in the person's ability, what things should they be doing that they're not doing, what things should they not be doing that they are doing. You do a causal analysis to see if there's any underlying mental health condition. And then you do a judgmental analysis. That is there persuasive clinical evidence of a disorder or condition that is functionally linked to the observed risk or work impairments? And if yes, the employee is unfit for duty. If no, the employee is fit for duty. Again, you need to educate your agency client to understand that fit for duty does not translate into everything's okay with this person. It just means that whatever problems there are administrative behavioral issues unrelated to an underlying medical condition.